This is Podmasana, and I am Brendan Orr. What happens when a pioneering physician encounters profound loss and discovers a deeper dimension of healing, not just for the body, but for the human spirit? Today's guest embodies this extraordinary journey from medical expertise to spiritual awakening. Dr. Raj Kumar Mani is a distinguished pulmonologist and critical care specialist with nearly 4 decades of medical excellence. As Director of Clinical Services at Yashoda Hospital and past president of the Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine, he's been at the forefront of introducing life-saving innovations like non-invasive ventilation and sleep medicine to India. His medical achievements are impressive. Over 100 published articles, leadership roles in international trials, and pioneering work in sepsis management and COVID care. But Dr. Mani's most profound contribution may be in an area many physicians struggle to address: the intersection of medicine and meaning, of clinical care and compassionate presence. He led the landmark legal efforts that established India's right to living wills and dignity in dying, representing his profession before the Supreme Court to ensure terminally ill patients could refuse unwanted life support with grace and choice. Yet behind these professional accomplishments lies a deeply personal spiritual journey that began with devastating loss. At just 14, he lost his father. At 23, fresh out of medical school, he lost his beloved mother. In that moment of profound grief, something shifted. As he describes it, a sense of an immense presence descended on me. I became aware of the spiritual dimension of life for the first time. This awakening transformed not just how he practiced medicine, but how he approached life itself. As he puts it, the spiritual life led to a value-based life, strongly away from materialistic objectives. Yet this path wasn't without struggle. Through the demands of his medical career, marriage, and fatherhood, his faith has been continuously tested, creating what he describes as a new internal struggle between what I thought was a vision of the divine nature against the pull of the materialistic world. Dr. Mani has learned to find the sacred in everyday moments, treating patients with deeper compassion and discovering that true wealth comes not from material pursuits, but from peace, harmony, and purpose found in our own selves. In this episode of Podmasana, join us for a conversation that bridges the clinical and the contemplative, exploring how spiritual awakening navigates the challenges and complexities of professional and personal life. Raj, welcome to Podmasana.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. Raj, can you take us back to your childhood and tell us about your family, your mother, father, your sisters, and how they all influenced and shaped your upbringing, and what values did they instill in you?
Sure. It is a very loving family. Father, mother, 2 older sisters. And we were a middle-class family. Father was a famous lawyer in his time. Mother was a housewife. The values were varied between the 2 parents. Mother was more traditional, wasn't questioning the state of things. She was very pious, religious, doing pujas every day, and typical Hindu value system she embodied. Whereas father was less traditional. He was sort of authentic person. He wasn't like anybody else. That was a striking memory. He had very practical but lofty ideals. The values were very open, embracing everybody, for one thing. Didn't discriminate between people. He didn't overtly believe in any religion. He was not overtly Hindu, whereas mother was. He was more, shall we say, secular. Embracing values wherever he found them, not separating people into categories. So, although he wasn't openly rebellious of any religious tradition, he wasn't wholeheartedly embracing the traditional values. He was sort of emphasized the fact that we have to create our own value systems. It can't be just borrowed or just taken unquestioningly. Okay, that was what he embodied, that sort of value system, which is more attractive but more difficult to follow, as I discovered going further. Sisters were very loving. They doted on me. They still do. What happened in my childhood was a sudden shock of the passing away of the father at age 14. And it was a sudden shake-up of whatever we were used to in terms of socioeconomic status, and also the big figure of the father. He was a very influential figure. Although he didn't spend too much time with us individually, he was too busy. However, watching him was a education itself. He was very disciplined, very industrious, and as I said, had a very open heart, open mind. So, with the sudden shock of his passing away, there was a whole lot of churning in the mind, who to follow, who will be the role model. There was a sudden taking away of the role model, personally speaking, for me, and of course, very shattering for my sisters as well, and especially for my mother. So, this is, in a nutshell, what happened in my childhood and what values my parents carried, and which I'm sure have influenced my later career, my life.
You said you were just 14 when your father passed away suddenly, and that threw your family into financial uncertainty. How did that early loss shape your understanding of life's fragility and your sense of responsibility?
At age 14, I didn't really articulate it to myself. But yes, what you call fragility came as a real experience. Came face to face with it for the first time. But it hadn't sort of formulated into words at that time. It was perhaps there in the subconscious, because the next shock when it happened, my mother took up a job for the first time in her life after father passed away. It's a humble job, but it sustained the family. And for 9 years, I was with my mother after the passing away my father. My sisters were married, and I spent the longest time after the passing away of my father with my mother. And she was also, with great suddenness, taken away. Within a few days of a fever, a brain fever, she passed away. And all that was locked up inside. As you call it, fragility of life. That I became even more starkly visible to me as an inner experience. Not just, it was not outward, it was very much an inner shaking up. Okay. A shifting of perspective, a collapse of the world as you knew it. It came even more starkly than after the passing away of the father. Here now, this time round, I was totally alone. There was no, my sisters were, belonged to another family. They had the families of their own, growing families. So here I found myself sort of orphaned. Mother passed away. And so I found myself practically alone in the world, unprepared. And then this shift of perspective that the world is transient. What we take for granted isn't the real thing. The real is concealed from us. It's not necessarily frightening, but as a fact. Factually, everything is ephemeral. What you take for granted, what you rely on, what you depend on, what you stand on, lean on, they can be taken away seemingly cruelly from you anytime. So such a churning I was not prepared for, but it actually happened.
After your father's death, Raj, you talked about how your mother had to work for the first time in her life while you were continuing her education. What did you learn from watching her resilience during those difficult years?
She was an amazing woman. As I said, she hadn't stepped out of the house for a first of 40 odd years. And then she made bold to step out and take up an employment and then manage the family, manage the three children, growing children, and arrange and marriages of her two daughters, and also protect the plot of land she had got from her husband in a house building society and to build a house. So her resilience, her determination, and the protective maternal instincts really coming to the fore so vividly before me. There was nothing else but love and admiration. And that is another reason why the loss seemed so flattening to me. I mean, the sense of loss was so complete and so shattering. But strangely, I wrote the experience of that bereavement later on in the form of a poem. And, it expresses see, the sort of inner experience that I went through at that time. It was called The Bereavement. A presence from me suddenly taken away. The world as I knew suddenly blown away. The heart, in a deep sense of loss, from her wrenched. She left me grieving, but in her blessings drenched. Strangely, in the hushed silence of the heart got silent. All that I had taken for granted had suddenly vanished. Okay, there was nothing. It was empty. In that emptiness, in that hush, I could feel her blessings. Okay, there was something sacred. There was something delicate but beautifully calming in the inner experience. Although it was a huge shock, didn't leave me finished. It sort of made me reborn with a different perspective. Reborn into not a vacant space, but a world which seemed more intense, more vivid, more meaningful.
When you lost your mother to brain fever when you were just finishing medical school at 23, you've been describing this as a moment when something within you shifted in terms of perception. Can you walk us through what happened in those immediate days and weeks after her passing?
Yes, I think immediately afterwards, while I wept for her, I had this shift in perception. I could feel that there was something deeper, more meaningful in life than I had suspected until that time. It is not all outside. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a huge component, dimension within us, which gets revealed to us by chance or by providence or by design. I don't know. But it does happen. And so it made me very seeking after solitude. So for 6 months afterwards, I lived like a recluse. I would go to the hospital, come back, but then I wouldn't mix with anybody. I would be in my room. I read whatever books I could lay my hands on because there were huge amount of questions. And what is it that I perceived outside? How do you explain it? And how do you explain all this experience? So I had to read books on religion, all religion. It's not just only the religion I'm born into. I read whatever, Christian or even non-religious philosophic and psychological literature I could find myself delving into and making sense. Different traditions, Western and Eastern made sense. They were not opposite of each other. They were complementing each other. The strange thing is, you're born into a certain culture, a tradition, a religion. Seemingly, other traditions which seem to be at at war with your culture didn't seem any more like that. They were not opposing each other. They were complementing each other. They were all alluding to a deeper reality. That's where they came together, alluding to a deeper reality. I became more contemplative, naturally meditative, and I was involved with reading these books wherever I could find time between the hospital rounds and everything. But something drove me, and one day, as I was contemplating, I had another sort of vision, something that was an inward experience, something that had a transformative power. And I found myself uttering the mantra Om Namah Shivaya. Okay. I was never religious. I just had the religious exposure through my mother. But I was more inclined to my father's approach to life. However, I found myself reading these religious books. I read the Gita in translation, of course, but I could read the Sanskrit also, and it made sense to me. When I sat, willy nilly in yogic asanas. Strangely, the yogic asanas seem to align with this mood, so to speak. Okay. Brendan, as a yoga teacher, where it comes from. The original yoga idea came from this consciousness, awareness of the deeper realities of life. And that's why they endure for so many millennia. This would occur to me. And then I would sit in those postures without being tutored. Maybe read some literature on yoga and saw some pictures. But the posturing was natural. Asanas were natural. And that is very strange. And they just made my body energetic and light and flexible. Okay. This is not something I have read, just came to me like that. And once, I had there was as I said, in the contemplative mood, there was a transformative vision, which has endured all my life. That also I sort of recorded in the form of a poem. If I may, I'll read
Yeah,
this
please
out.
share. Please share.
It's titled The Auspicious One. My Lord is Shiva, the Auspicious One. His ethereal visage, my inner eye can see. He of the lotus pose, of restful, luminous, half shut. Eyes are half shut because both the outer and the inner are one big word. Of a heady fragrance my breath can feel. There's an indescribable fragrance. Serpents hiss playfully. You know the imagery of Lord Shiva, the serpents round his neck. Serpents hiss playfully round his venom-darkened neck. The mythology says as he drank the poison to save the world from the poison, and for the world he gave the amrit, or the elixir, out of the churning of the seas. His blissful stillness my heart does feel. So that vision made me touch the still side of the heart. It exists always, but we are not aware. It made me aware of him. The matted locks, the smiling moon, the sparkle of the fair river, the Ganges flows down his hair. The vast brow, the smile mysterious, my whole being enthralled. So there was a quietude, there was a stillness, there was a fragrance, and there was this flow of the river of purity. He of a myriad variety, the formless they embodied. So he can be worshipped as a formless, as embodied. The contemplative, the creative. He's not just contemplating, he's also creation. Both are in this vast consciousness, whom no word can find. These are indescribable. Poetry is only an attempt to describe the indescribable. You resort to poetry because prose can't capture the spirit. Poetry touches the soul a little bit closer. Every moment of his dance, the celestial dance of Shiva, it's a whole imagery. Every moment of his dance, every pose, every beat of his drum holds eternity still. It's the originator of sound. So that is where it comes from, the drum, the origin of sound, the primordial. Such a being lives. It is not in mythology, it lives. Within and without, within us and outside of us. As truth, light, and the Sanskrit equivalent is Satyam Shivam Sundaram. Truth, light, and bliss. So truth, light, and bliss lives within us and outside of us.
Absolutely.
And as the nature of man, is the real nature of man, which we are in search of, which we want to realize. The simple, the ingenuous. He's supposed to be simple as a child. The well-beloved, the stainless, the one and the many. So the various ways of describing the the vision of the conscious, the primordial. It is a primordial, what do you call energy? Primordial energy of life is this consciousness. The undifferentiated. It first came as a primordial energy, then it differentiated into various beings, various creatures, living, non-living. The essence of our existence, the substratum of where we operate, the awesome and the unfathomable. So perhaps I can convey to you that it was the most extraordinary inner experience triggered by the passing away of my mother.
Mm.
And the wrenching of the heart I felt in her absence of her loving presence. But to be honest, after a few days, I stopped feeling her absence. It was replaced by a glow in the heart of the shift in perception, which seemed to hold a light for what the life may bring, and what path I would adopt, which way I may grow or evolve, what I would value. So it had a very deep significance in my life, this experience.
During that 6-month period that you've been talking about, when you became this social recluse and you're reading everything you could find on religion, psychology, and philosophy, what do you think you were searching for, and what questions were you trying to answer?
See, the first question was, why me? Why did it happen to me? Did I do anything wrong to deserve my mother going away? Did I not protect her? I mean, I have grown up enough. I thought it was some lapse on my part. And then after this experience, which just made all the old thoughts disappear, let me say, suddenly all old patterns disappeared. New questions arose. What I just saw within me, or I saw new and knew this world around me. I mean, is it real or is it just a hallucination? Is it a hallucination of a depressed fellow, of somebody who lost his very beloved mother? Is it my imagination? Okay, is it my self-defensive mechanism? Is this shared by others? Is this something peculiar to me? So that's what made me read. Searching for this answer. Is this real or not? And everything that is said in the literature of the world, the classical literature, suddenly became intelligible to me. Previously I used to read because they were supposed to be good or supposed to be educative. But this was not for education. This was to look for validity of my experience. See what I mean? It was
Yes.
not looking for information. It is looking for some relatability to whatever others have experienced. And I found, to my surprise, it was relatable to everybody on earth. I saw the shallowness of the barriers of West and East, white and brown and black, and the various religious traditions. I thought they were artificial barriers. They were not real. And all the confrontations, hostilities did not seem real. On the contrary, the instinct of human beings to try and figure out what the other half is doing, that seemed more real. And that figures why. Because fundamentally, the consciousness we share is the same. Various countries are different, the environments are different, the socioeconomic status and political life is different. But as I said, the substratum is the consciousness. And Shiva was symbolic of this consciousness. Not a deity, it's a symbol. And that's how it made a difference. Worshipping or doing puja to a stone figure, nor to something because I was told to do so. It's a good thing to worship, it's a good thing to pronounce the mantras in a certain way. This is what we were told as in the Brahminical tradition of the Hindu religion. But all that became a very, it's meaningful only in a very shallow sense. In a deeper sense, those things disappear. The ritualistic side of Hindu religion disappeared before my eyes.
I think that's an interesting comment coming from someone who was born Indian, and because the role of ritual, as you know very well, is a very large part of Indian identity writ large. Could you maybe speak to that a little bit?
Yes. So in my boyhood, I was questioning all that. Subconsciously, I was questioning, why should I utter mantras which I don't understand? Why can't I pray in simple language in whatever way my words form? Why should they be sing song, Sanskrit shlokas which I don't understand at all? And then I didn't feel the piety that my mother felt in the puja room. I didn't feel it. I was more inclined to read something or know something which appealed to reason. See, the heart side was not there. Prior to this experience, it was all the brain side. Once you saw that it's all basically the consciousness that human beings want to touch, want to realize, willy-nilly, whether they know it, they are aware of it or not aware of it. Even in the materialistic world, that's what they are looking for. They're looking for that principle within themselves, which is a life force, which is the light within themselves. Okay, in any way you go, whether you go outward or you go inward, you are searching for it. So I didn't find any difference between the material and the spiritual. To be honest, such a division also is artificial. Whatever be your endeavor, whatever be your search or path, the meaning that they embody or they represent is to be found in the reality of consciousness that we hold within ourselves. Life is equal to that consciousness. When consciousness departs, the body doesn't live, and that consciousness is same in all living, breathing things. And in fact, the Vedantic philosophy of Hindu religion says that vibration is there in inanimate things as well, in non-living. There is no difference between living and non-living. It is the consciousness which is a vibration. So these principles, these ideas, they actually intersect between science and art and religion and philosophy.
Agreed. Hey, Podmasana listeners. Brendan here to briefly thank you for listening to the show. It means a great deal. If you haven't yet, please share the show with others. It helps to grow the show. If you have been enjoying the episode so far and would like to see the show continue, please consider a Podmasana Plus subscription at the Sage Supporter, Wisdom Seeker, or Enlightened Circle level. It's a great way to support the show, connect to like-minded listeners, and receive some perks. 20% discounts are available for yearly subscriptions. You can also donate to the show and leave a podcast review on your preferred listening platform. For more information, visit podmasana.com/support. That's podmasana.com/support. Thank you. Raj, you described in some of the writings you shared experiencing a new internal struggle between what you thought was a vision of the divine nature against the pull of the materialistic world. As a young doctor, how did you navigate wanting to abandon medicine for a more spiritual path while building your medical career?
Yes. See, after the initial flush of discovery was gone, it was gone as suddenly as it came. Only a dim memory persisted in one corner, and that was not forgettable. Right? There was a unforgettable residue left by those experiences. So this was followed by a struggle of a different kind. There was at one point I was contemplating just leaving it all, medicine, everything, because it didn't align with the new discovery. If you wanted to pursue this new discovery to make it actualize in your life and every bit, that was the passion at that time. That, I would like to actualize this, right? Whatever you found. Now, you must actually live in a way that doesn't differentiate between people. It doesn't, you have to live in a way that embraces everybody, live in a way that doesn't produce barriers, in fact, brings down barriers. Now, how would you do that living in this world, in practical? Medicine is in many ways a very materialistic science. It is deals practically in reason, in measurable things, and in a delivery in a particularly structured way. formalized way. Then I found a way to somehow express what's in my heart in medicine by actually working on the human side of it. See what I
Mm.
mean? There's a because you don't work with machines, you work with human side. So you make it central to your job. You work around the human side, not just the science side. You use science as a tool rather than as an end in itself. That way, I try to adapt my new knowledge or discovery to the career that I had taken, which no longer held the same sort of meaning to me as it did before my mother passed away. I was thinking of a more linear career graph. But this suddenly changed the whole whole scene for me and made me think anew what I want to do. Anyway, willy nilly, I stuck to the job. I stuck to my career. I did my exams, managed to stay the course in medicine. And of course, it took me to England for 5 years, where I did more advanced training. All that went on, but there was this inner voice which kept speaking to me about the truths that were so clearly shown to me, given to me, or the grace that came to me at a certain time period in my life. So that memory of it lingered and never went away. It intensified my struggles with coming to terms with the realities of the world in a
Mm.
new way, in a new sense. But another thing I must tell you that the navigation uh, through medicine, through the materialistic side of medicine, integrating the human side was inevitable for me. And the ethical code of medicine was even more real. And in fact, it included many more things.
Mm.
It was just to actually work for the benefit of the patient and family, not just for the disease, but to work towards a wellness became a passion, and which became a daily sort of practice for me to realize the goals of aligning myself with the truth that came to me.
Mm. Mm.
My new spiritual path that was given me, I had to
Mm.
align myself with that to be an integrated person, to feel self-respect. That happened. That drove me to of course there were some in the early part of my career. I did a lot of scientific things, but then in the last 20 odd years of my career, my attention has been very much occupied by the end of life care. Mortality of the human being is very real, and which the healthcare person comes face to face every day. And as an intensive care specialist, I was coming face to face with it even more often than the usual practitioner. Then the way we answer to the needs of the dying became very important. It's not just adjusting their physiology or treating the disease, and also misapplication of technology became very important to me in this
Mm.
context. So it drove me to new regions in the context of Indian medicine, because in Indian medicine there was scarce attention being paid to the dying experience or addressing the needs of the dying, or appropriate withdrawal or withholding of technological care, technologically intensive life support systems. So it brought me to that stage. And I happened to lead the reforms and end of life care in the country over the last 20 odd years.
All of that hard work, studying for over the years, regardless of what country you were in, definitely translated into some career accomplishments. And you were a pioneer in introducing non invasive ventilation and sleep medicine to India in the 90s. How do you think your spiritual awakening influenced your approach to innovation and patient care during these groundbreaking years?
I think there was an intensity in the practice, because it was not just driven by the ambition to progress in your job. Of course, that was there, very much there. Ambition to earn more, be more affluent. But underlying it all was the ambition to align myself with the spiritual path,
Mm.
that is to be an integrated whole and to address every human being as a whole person, not just as a patient or a customer or a beneficiary of medicine. It is to hold the personhood in front of you, And then that drove me to innovations, because the non-invasive ventilation was an idea which was there elsewhere in the advanced world, but was not yet there in India in the early 90s, and which could spare many patients the tube ventilation, the invasive ventilation. The machines were scarce in India at that time. There wasn't too much money. Families would get destroyed by a stint on the invasive ventilator. So we had to find alternatives. So that's what drove me to develop the non-invasive ventilation concept and to disseminate it across the country. And now, of course, it's there in every nook and corner. The challenge of intensive care, seeing life very closely, and the rescue that's involved in the intensive care is really appealed to me. And it needed an intensity and a certain sort of instinct for quick decision, which also seemed to be there in me to some extent, which I could develop.
Your work on end of life care and the legal right to living wills also seems deeply connected to your personal spiritual journey. What drove you to take on the legal establishment and fight for patients' rights and dignity in dying?
Because it seemed so unfair, all the burdens towards the end of life. Families would get destroyed by mindless expenses toward the end of life. And the patient's lot was not good at all. Suffering, struggling. That's what drove me. We had to do something to mitigate the suffering. It seemed very preventable suffering. It is not something which is inevitable. And that's what the big barriers were, the culture, the prevailing culture in the professional circles of not thinking beyond just correcting physiology or just doing what they've been used to doing mechanically, thoughtless. The idea was to drive colleagues to thoughtful action, and that would culminate, in end-of-life decision-making, appropriate decision-making, good communication with the family, empathetic, meaningful, and patient communication. So all these values seem to be in alignment with the values that I had cut. So, and then the legal barrier was very big. In most doctors' minds, they felt that they could be legally liable if they took appropriate treatment limiting decisions. So it was my job to persuade them passionately not to think in those terms. And I worked simultaneously with the legal systems. There was Supreme Court judgments which we pronounced in our favor as it evolved over the years. Now we have a legal sanction for these decisions and a legal procedure. So we've come a long way in 20 years.
Certainly. Thanks for your efforts on that front, for sure. And so we all recall the COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges that were experienced during those years. During the pandemic, as a pulmonologist and critical care specialist, you were on the front lines of that unprecedented crisis. How did your yoga practice and spiritual foundation that we've discussed help you navigate those intense months of treating critically ill patients?
See, yoga practice is very important part of my daily life. Even if I'm traveling, I do 15-20 minutes of yoga, which in the hotel room. Somehow it grounds me, gives me perspective. The worries subside for a while, and fears are mitigated. So without yoga, I couldn't have faced uncertainties like a pandemic. And the family was very anxious for my health, naturally. And also were anxious that I shouldn't bring the infection home. I have an elderly father-in-law. So these concerns were there. They were practical family concerns. But there's certainly yoga practice gives you perspective. It gives you a sense of the wholeness of life, and you feel protected by immense presence. Let me put it that way. We call him God or whatever, superpower. But I think it is not God up in the skies. It's God in your daily life. In everything that you do and think, there's a principle, there is a light which guides your action, which guides your decisions. That's what you connect with in yoga. When you do yoga, yoga is not just the physical side of the asana. The larger, much bigger side is the psychological and the spiritual side. And actually what we attempt to do is to connect with the inner resource, the sanctuary. The inner sanctuary is the calm lake. You sit by the lake for a while You get your perspective, get your bearings, and then you go into the world and do your decision making, your actions. So that's how I'm sure yoga had a lot to do in my decision to participate in the COVID pandemic management as a physician. Otherwise, I could have taken the decision to retire by that time.
I appreciate the answer because, I've encountered other people in high demand professions, let's say actors, lawyers, and one of the reasons why they often give to why they don't do yoga is that, oh, I don't have the time. I just don't think it'll be good for me. So, as someone who has alluded to yoga being that underlying support structure during your career, during your life, what would you say to people who think that way?
I would say even 10 minutes or 15 minutes will do.
Mm.
It's like taking a rest, taking a break from the hustle bustle of life, and it makes you more efficient. Makes your tasks easier. In fact,
Mm.
you accomplish more efficiently. So it is useful pragmatically, and of course, some spiritual practice is very much needed for every human being. Whatever be our tasks at hand, it's an essential.
Even 10 to
Mm.
15 minutes can help you ground and connect. And I think if there was however many billion humans walking around the earth that were a little more grounded and connected, perhaps some of the things we see as problems might go away or be lesser than.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've discussed, Raj, how your medical profession, marriage, and fatherhood have tested your faith over the years. Can you share how you've maintained your spiritual practice while meeting the demands of being a husband, father, and a leading physician?
I think I've mentioned how it changed my practice, the spiritual approach and the value systems that I came to admire. In your personal life, marriage and fatherhood, what is vital, most vital, is very clear to me. It is the love that we share. And love is actually is a whole journey. It's not just one-off thing. It's not something there or not there. It's a challenge to keep it there. It's a challenge to discover it and make it flower, because love is so difficult to understand. What I believe is that the spiritual experience that I shared, that brought to me very vividly, very clearly, unmistakable, that the way we relate to consciousness is love. Actually, love is our reality.
Mm.
It is not an add-on. It is not anything artificial. The most natural part of us, the dimension of us which is the simplest and most natural, is the attitude of love. And to bring the challenges of understanding love to you is what is marriage and family. In all the vicissitudes of marriage and parenting, you hold on to this truth about love. You hold on to it for dear life. You hold on to
Yes.
it. Don't let it go. However difficult it may seem for a while, all that is temporary. In fact, that's how yoga also helps. When you
Mm.
feel overwhelmed by the stresses of these relationships, you sit by the lake of the self. That's what yoga is. Yoga is not just the postures. Postures come naturally. As we sit by the lake, the body conforms to your thoughts, to your attitude. Of course, they feed each other. Your body posture also transform your attitude and vice versa. But you begin somewhere. You begin at one end. You begin with this attitude of love, and it transforms our body posture and shape. So I think everything flows from consciousness.
Mm.
Nothing is separate. So you don't have to willfully remain a spinster or a bachelor. You don't willfully need to shun anything. You don't have to willfully leaving behind everything, go to the mountains. You don't have to do all that. I mean, at least it is not an essential. If you feel impelled to do so, if that's what your life is designed to be, that's well and that's fine. But it is not an essential part of the search. The search is all inside, within.
Yeah, I like that answer. And it makes me think of the comparisons or commonalities between marriage and yoga, right? So, just like yoga is a practice, and whatever might be derived from it will come from that commitment to the practice. Similarly, if we aren't showing up in our relationships and practicing that present moment observation and stillness, where it is said that the divine resides. Those relationships can benefit from us spending time practicing.
Yes. In fact, marriage and fatherhood is a practice.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. One of the accomplishments of yoga.
Yes.
It's a yoga in action in practice in the real world.
Hello, Podmasana listeners. Did you know the show is on Blue Sky, Mastodon, Instagram, and Threads? If you're on one of those platforms, feel free to give the show a follow for the latest updates. You can also follow or subscribe to listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or any other podcast app. Thank you. Raj, in one of the poems that you shared, you write beautifully about going shopping for an armful of golden sunshine and a lungful of cool breeze rather than material things. As someone in the later stages of a distinguished career, how has your relationship with material success and achievement evolved?
I think now material things in themselves don't seem meaningful to me unless they symbolize something, unless they represent the truth that you perceived. Okay? A truth that was given you, in fact. You didn't go after it. Given you. In day to day life, everything is relatable if you perceive things through that perspective of meaningfulness in the larger scheme of things. If we narrow our vision, there's a lot of suffering in the narrowness. If we broaden the vision, there is a healing process which reduces the impact of these, the toxicity of narrowness. All around us is a lot of potential for toxicity. There is toxicity to our health and to our inner well-being. But most important of these is the toxicity in our thoughts and attitude. If we get a larger perspective, and as I said, if we remain close to the inner sanctuary of the heart, the tranquility of the lake in the cellar, then you find a way to mitigate these toxicities. And that's what health is. That's what happiness is. That's what joy is. It can't be artificially given you. Joy can't be artificially given. It generates itself when you mitigate the toxicity. There is so much being spoken and written about how we must conduct ourselves, live, how we must look at our daily lives and change it towards wellness. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen master, has spoken a lot about paying attention to your breath. So when you pay attention to your breath, you connect with the reality, right? So all these breathing techniques people have propagated. He also mentioned something called the walking meditation. As we walk, what we focus on, what we center ourselves on, that is a meditation. So in the poem that you alluded to, it is something to describe the walking meditation. It's titled Morning's Fair. The morning was fair, so I went shopping. Fair has two meanings here. A fair morning and it's a fair as well, where you do shopping. There are too many things one could buy. There's so many assaults on your senses. I collected whatever I could. An arm full of golden sunshine, a lung full of cool breeze, an eye full of green, yellow, red colors, a spectrum of colors, an ear full of bird song. That's there naturally. Wherever you looked were sights galore. Whatever you look at, it's a sight. It is something glorious. And people like you and me, and people are all around you, they're like you and me, made of the same stuff, having the same experience of life. Whatever I could see, even the friendly stray dogs, stray dogs in a typical Indian city, and the naughty monkeys, espy a monkey or two, I put in my heart's bag. That is the love in the heart, takes in all this, puts it in the bag. It was all a barter system still. In this shop, in this fair, the shopping that you do is through a barter system, where all your currency and cards didn't work. Your material possessions don't work here. You had to pay in your cares and stresses. The cares and stresses you give away, you drop, you relinquish, and then you get these things to shop. And the me sense, you have to pay in your cares and stresses and the me sense. You don't separate the me from what you see. There's no separation in the world around you. Then you can shop. You can truly shop anything. The more you paid, the more the trolley filled for the family table. You could go for a walk, see all the sights, put them in the heart's bag and bring them home. All the sunshine, the breeze, and the bird song.
That poem has moved me, hearing it fresh now. And you mentioned that increasingly the heart is moved by music and poetry, and that you often put your spiritual experiences into verse, Raj. How has writing become a form of prayer or meditation for you?
You see, as I shared with you my experience as a young man, I couldn't communicate that to people around me and not raise an eyebrow or two, not connected with the immediate reality. And so I found my diary as my confidant. So you articulated whatever you couldn't speak openly about, or you articulated something that disturbed you, did upset you, all right? Align with what you valued. That happens most of the time, that you don't find frequently where people's values align with each other. Okay, we go through the motions of social interaction, but not necessarily all of them are in harmony. So you have that, then you need to articulate that. If you can't articulate that with another human being, then you can do that to your diary. And that is how most of the poetry has arisen. In attempting to articulate either something that occurs to you in your solitude, you don't get uh, that mood or that experience in the din of the world. In your solitude, you tune yourself to your authentic self. Okay, and then you find expression to certain feelings and thoughts which you couldn't articulate before. So it is not just for a spiritual experience. It is just for communicating, certain ideas, thoughts which you couldn't share with others openly. That's how I think my poetry was born. What was not easily expressed, but found expression in my solitude.
You had mentioned Thich Nhat Hanh earlier, and he, of course, comes to mind. Poetry has long been associated with spirituality and some of the world's faith traditions. And like Thich Nhat Hanh, immediately some esteemed Taoist poets such as Lao Tzu, Tu Fu, or even Sufi poets such as Rumi and Hafiz come to mind. And
Yes, yes.
maybe you probably read some of these. And then
Yeah, yeah.
why do you think poetry has been an outlet for you to explore and express your spirituality?
Because I think more than prose, poetry is closer to the heart.
Mm.
Heart is closer to the soul than any other part of the body. So somewhere it touches the soul. And that is why it attracts me when I read it, or when I want to express something that is touches the deeper parts of our life and living and thinking. Then you need to resort to poetry, in my mind. Prose is too stiff, too much within strict boundaries. Poetry gives you more freedom. It touches on regions which are deeply subjective. Prose lends itself more to objective expressions. Now, poetry is not objective. It is deeply subjective. It may use objective symbols, but they are meaningful only in the symbolism. They are not meaningful in themselves. Unlike science, which deals in numbers, and numbers are, just that. If you want to touch the human core, then you have to listen to music or to touch poetry. Music is also like that. It has got no boundaries, strict boundaries. Music is immediately appealing, immediately transports you to your consciousness. Immediate effect. It doesn't involve a thought process. Yeah. It doesn't involve a thought process. Thought doesn't intervene.
Lyrics are really just like a form of
Yes.
poetry, like for music. So, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Raj, looking back on your journey from the adversity you experienced in your younger days to who you are today, if you could sit with that young man in his moments of profound loss, what would you tell him about the path ahead and what it means to find what some call the light of life?
I would tell that young man just that. Everything is temporary. Everybody in your life is temporary, except the light. The light you carry from birth to death and maybe beyond, as all of philosophers tell you life is not finite, it is infinite, and we are a drop in an infinite ocean. To that young man, I would say that you experience whatever you're experiencing. You're experiencing the loss, you're experiencing the tragedy, you are down in the dumps, you feel it. You feel it intensely. Don't run away. Don't run away to a thought process that lessens the impact. In fact, it is the embracing of whatever is thrown at you in life. Fully, without reserve, without fear. That's what makes you aware of the real you, the authentic you. That is your inner light. You are your own light. You're a light unto yourself. You don't have to borrow that light. You can't take another person's light. You can help another light his own life. You can't be that light. You can't give that light. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I guess it could be surmised as connect to the light, keep it on, and carry it with you. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. If we were trying to break it down into a succinct poem. So the last question I have, Uncle Raj, is there's a poem that is on a tapestry at the home office. It's attributed to Zen Buddhism. Would it be okay if I shared it with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Great. If there is light in the soul, there is beauty in the person. If there is beauty in the person, there will be harmony in the house. If there is harmony in the house, there will be order in the nation.
Yes.
If there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. Having heard this poem and thinking about modern times, what is a spiritual person to make of this poem?
I think we are all aware diametrically opposite things happen around us. And what's contained in this poem is very little of harmony, there's more strife. There is very little light, there's a lot of ignorance and darkness. And homes are not harmonious, nor are nations, nor is the world. What does the spiritual person do? If he or she finds a light within herself or himself, then one must grow in protection of that. Be protected by that light and protect that light yourself. Because nothing comes without giving anything. So the purpose of life is to stay close to that light. Hold it in your hand. Go through the path, whatever be the winds thereof. Protect it. And be guided by that. Both ways. It works both ways. What you're guided by, you must protect with your life.
Yeah, I like that. Well, thank you very much, Raj, for being on Podmasana.
Thank you. Thank you, Brendan, for all those nice questions. Probing questions. Thank you.
Hey, listeners, what did you think about this one? Send us an email at feedback@podmasana.com. Chat with me and other Podmasana Plus members in an exclusive chat, or reach out on social media. We look forward to hearing from you. Catch you next time on Podmasana.